Hello, everyone. My name's Ida Shen, and I'm a food program manager in the Bay Area region. Today, I have the distinct pleasure of bringing to you Carolyn Jung. She's a food writer and blogger based in the Bay Area here in Northern California. She has been featured in the San Francisco Chronicle, Eating Well, Every Day with Rachel Ray, and many other publications. Today, we'll be discussing her latest book, East Bay Cooks, which features 41 chefs and business owners based in the other side of the Bay, Oakland, Berkeley, and our surrounding cities. We'll talk about the restaurants and food, culture, and how we can support the hospitality industry in this time.
Hi, Ida.
Hi, Carolyn. Welcome to Food Talks. How are you?
I'm good. Hi, everyone out there.
Well, I have to say I'm very excited. I'm a big fan of your blog, and when I saw your book about a year ago, I believe
it came out just about a year ago exactly.
Yeah, I was really excited and called and said, "Can we get a conversation going with Carolyn?" So I'm glad we're finally here.
Thank you.
So I think this is a really time to have a conversation about restaurants in particular, right? Because I think people are realizing how much time they spent in restaurants, and now it's a different scene out there. Have you talked to any of the restaurant tours that you interviewed for this book?
I think the pandemic has, of course, affected everyone. And like you said, it has shown us just what a lifeblood restaurants are to our community. You know, they are our place that we just drop in when we don't feel like cooking. They're the place that we go to when we celebrate a special occasion. We love it when we're regulars at a place and we develop relationships with servers and owners and chefs, and they become just a part of our family. And it's been just such an incredible struggle for them this year, not only because they had to shelter in place and close for so many months, but also because once they reopened, they could only do takeout. And, you know, there are some cities now where indoor is slowly being allowed. But I think with the chefs that I've talked to lately, I mean, most of them are just hoping to break even at this point, and very few of them are actually doing that. I think the scope of the turmoil was best reflected in a couple statistics that came out. Yelp did an economic study, I think March through July, and there were close to 370 restaurants at that point, and that's only through July, that closed permanently. And the Bay Area is the third highest hit metropolitan area in the U.S. for restaurant closures at this point. And the National Restaurant Association came out with a study a couple weeks ago that 100,000 restaurants nationwide have now closed. And, you know, we all believe, unfortunately, that figure is only going to grow as the weather changes, fall, winter come, rain, cold weather. It's going to be very difficult for restaurants to continue to do outdoor dining, especially they're especially going to be hurt if they can't do indoor dining. And you know, we can't, of course, also forget to mention the fires. You know, just overnight, the restaurant at Meadowwood, the Michelin 3-starred restaurant, burned to the ground, which is such a tragedy. And, you know, we're not even at the end of fire season right now. So who knows what's to come.
Yeah, it's a travesty. What would you suggest for supporting these restaurants?
Well, I think, you know, people need to make their own personal decision about how comfortable they are in terms of dining inside a restaurant or even dining outside. I know lots of friends of mine who are still, you know, I myself even probably would not dine inside a restaurant at this point, and I'm still a little leery of dining even outside. But do takeout, like my husband and I, we have pledged, since all of this began, that we would get takeout at least once a month to help support our local restaurants in the area. Restaurants themselves, they can't live on just takeout. And it's very difficult for them to make revenues anywhere approaching what they used to do at this time. So yeah, get takeout. And if you can, definitely go to the restaurant yourself and pick it up. Don't rely on a third party delivery service, because they're charging, anywhere from 10 to 30% on top of the price to the restaurant. So if you go and pick it up yourself, the restaurant accrues all that entire revenue instead of having to pay out to the delivery service. And, let's face it, traffic is not that bad these days. Parking is pretty decent, even in the Mission District. So it's not that big of a deal to hop in your car or, take public transit to go pick up your own food. The other thing I would say, the other couple of things I would say would be, buy gift cards, either for yourself or for friends for their birthdays coming up, or even Christmas gifts. But I would add a caveat to that, which is there's a good side and a bad side to gift cards. One is gift cards provide immediate revenue to the restaurant, which they definitely need at this time. They also, though, have to pay taxes on that. And then when you go, let's say 2 months from now, and redeem those gift cards, the restaurant basically is faced with giving you free, quote unquote, free food at that time, which, hurts their revenue stream that day. So what I've done, with the gift cards that I had lying around, I'll use them, but then I'll add a bunch of stuff on top of that. So what I'm spending goes way beyond the price of the gift card. You add on a bottle of wine, a couple cocktails, double up on desserts. And, a lot of things also keep well into the next day. So if you want to have leftovers for lunch, just order a couple of things that will hold well, that you can either saute in a pan or microwave and enjoy it the next day. The other things I would say is you want to do something like donate to World Central Kitchen, which is Jose Andres's nonprofit, which just does incredible work. He, I believe, is already on the ground in Sonoma, feeding people again. And every catastrophe, he and his team of volunteers have just, taken charge in a horrific, chaotic situation to be able to feed people who desperately need nourishment and just a warm meal. And the other thing that's great about his nonprofit is that he enlists restaurants. He's done that around the Bay Area, where donations that he takes in are paid out to the restaurant. So the restaurant workers are put to work in that restaurant to make those meals that then go to people in need, first responders, firefighters, you name it. So those are some of the great ways that people can help and really support local restaurants right now.
Well, thank you, because your book really just focuses on the local restaurant scene, right? And you've had another book very similar to this, the San Francisco Eats. I can't remember. I'm sorry about the name.
The Chef's Table, yeah.
Chef's Table. So it's a different kind of cookbook. It's not like you're writing the recipes. You are telling the story of these restaurateurs and then featuring their recipes. And what's that writing process like? It's different, right? Is it kind of like herding
It's a little crazy. I think one time I had a pastry chef describe what I was doing as herding wild cats, because each of these books, especially East Bay Cooks, has like 41 restaurants. And so 40 or more pastry chefs involved in giving me their recipes to test. And, no disrespect to chefs. I know they have a huge amount of stuff on their plate and they're pulled in so many directions, but a lot of them are not really great about deadlines. So it was, I swear, probably for every chef in that book, it was a matter of at least 20 emails, texts, phone calls to keep them on track. Because, of course, I, under contract with very specific deadlines to meet for my publisher of, when the manuscript has to be in, when the list of restaurants has to be finalized and all that. So it's kind of like cracking the whip on them at times. And I felt really bad knowing how busy they are. But they were all wonderful to work with. So yeah, East Bay Cooks, I really wanted to represent the breadth and diversity of the East Bay because it is just such an amazing area for every kind of food and cuisine you could imagine. So I think a lot of times people automatically think East Bay, oh, well, Oakland and Berkeley, but it's, so much more beyond that. It's a huge geographic area. Danville, Pleasanton, Walnut Creek, Livermore, you name it. And so I tried to get a really representative group of chefs for that book, both geographically and then also cuisine-wise and culturally.
Well, we're a pretty large area, the East Bay. So how many chefs did you cast your net to? Because you ended up with 41. Did you have to reach out to, 100 or less?
Yeah, probably. So what also made this book kind of challenging was this particular publisher has a business model where the chefs who participate in this book have to make a commitment to also help in selling some of the books and promoting it, of course. And so with the East Bay restaurants, understandably, a lot of them are very small mom and pop operations. And so for quite a number of them, it would be a big ask for them to do something like this. So I probably had to get in touch with or reach out to, I would say, over 100 restaurants in order to secure about 41 exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And they had to make that commitment to selling the books. Has COVID affected that? Because it's only a year old.
A little bit. We had done quite a few events and book signings throughout the East Bay, probably following like the 4 or 5 months right after the book came out. But I still had events kind of scheduled into this year. But those, were all canceled because of the shelter-in-place orders. And I know a lot of the chefs who were promoting the books too at their own restaurants still were wanting to do signing events at their own restaurants. But of course now that makes it a little more difficult because, people will have to either just contact the restaurant directly and try and pick it up through takeout orders. It's a little more of a hurdle than if they were just going in to dine at the restaurant and they see the book displayed on a shelf somewhere.
Yeah.
But a number of the restaurants still, I believe, are, selling the books at their restaurants. And I'm sure if you reach out to them, the chef who's in charge would, love to sign a personal copy.
Oh, that would be awesome. Yeah, that would be wonderful. Now, I seem to recall that there was a chef who had moved between restaurants while you were writing this, Would you mind sharing that story?
Well, it's a real challenge, I think, for most cookbooks because they usually take about a year to complete from, inception of writing and testing recipes and design and photography and then printing. So a lot can happen in that time. I had, a couple of sort of strange circumstances, including a couple chefs who either a couple of restaurateurs, they were going to open a second restaurant, had started construction and whatnot, and told me, that it's going to open right when the book comes out. we guarantee it. And then another chef in Oakland who had left her restaurant there and was had plans to open her own place in Oakland. And she also assured me, yes, I'm gonna find a place, it's gonna be open right before the book comes out. And lo and behold, they are still not open for various reasons. And I'm sure that the pandemic now has not made anything easier in that regard. So we had like some very, a couple strange things happen. Another one was a restaurateur. We had taken the photo of the chef. We had photographed the chef's food. I'd written the chapter and everything. And the manuscript was done and being copy edited, and the owner of the restaurant said, the chef left and we got a new chef. He's great. And is there any way we can include him instead? And fortunately, we had already scheduled sort of a makeup photography day because there were a couple of chefs who were either traveling or away during the week that we were doing all the photography. And so I said, okay, if you can get the chef to come on this day, and if you can get me his recipes right away, we can try and make this work. And mind you, what this also entails is renumbering the pages in all the book and redesigning that chapter just to fit this in. So we all did that. And a month later, the restaurateur sent me an email and he goes, okay, you're going to kill me. And I'm like, oh no, what happened? He said, so that new chef just left. And, it wasn't on the best of terms. So I really don't want that chef to be associated with our restaurant. Can we go back to the old restaurant chef who, I'm still really good friends with, and we'd love to feature him. And so at first I thought he was joking, but
was it around April?
Yeah, right. So he was serious. And so I immediately contacted my publisher and I said, look, here's the situation. And I'm so sorry, but could we make this happen? And so we did. And so we, scrapped those new photos, scrapped the recipes I had just tested, and we went back to the previous format with the previous chef. But yeah, you never know what's going to happen when it's a year-long process like this.
Well, I hear you say we a lot. And how many people are involved with you for a production like this? The photos are beautiful. So
I mean, I thank Eva Kalenko enough for her amazing photography. I just, I got to watch her work while she took the photos, and it was just such an education in someone who I think it's very difficult for a photographer to be so highly skilled in both food photography and portrait shots because they're very different animals, and she just excels at both. And she had this way of, making everyone just so comfortable. And we did all the photography at Rule and Level Studio in Berkeley, which Claire Mack is the owner there, and she has the most amazing setup. It is, she and her husband took an old coffee shop, and it's, when you walk in, it looks like Pottery Barn meets Williams Sonoma meets the most boutique ceramic studio. The whole walls going back into the place are just lined with the most amazing ceramics and plates and hand-blown glassware. It's a dream for anyone who loves decor, and every chef who walked into that door that week was just like in Candyland.
Yeah.
And so there's a professional kitchen in there, and so chefs could put the finishing touches on their dishes before they were photographed. In another room where Eva had set up her camera equipment. So we had, that whole process. And then Figure One, which is a small boutique publishing house in Vancouver, British Columbia. They've done this type of regional cookbook throughout Canada, and they decided, they were so successful to start doing it in the U.S. So East Bay Cooks, I think, was their third one in the U.S., and they've continued to do it. I think Miami, they just brought out that one this week. There were a couple others that they were working on, but have been impacted by COVID with the shelter-in-place orders.
And you are working on another one.
The photography to be taken at this time, but they have an amazing crew there. There was a art director who was on site with us for a few days when the photography was taken. I had an editor there who worked with me closely throughout the whole process. They also had copy editors and proofreaders. It was just amazing to work with them because it was just so professional, and the level of detail they went to. I always love to tell this story because it just boggles my mind about how much care and how nothing like escaped their eyes. So there was a restaurant that I wrote the chapter heading for that's in Oakland, and I mentioned how it's a favorite of the Warriors. The Warriors are based there, and I also mentioned that it was a favorite of Kevin Durant's. And the proofreader emailed me after reading it and said, I just looked up, and this was written in, of course, 2018, the end of 2018, and she said, I just looked up and I see Kevin Durant is a free agent. Maybe we shouldn't mention him because what if he's not on the team, when the book comes out? And lo and behold, he wasn't. So I just thought that's incredible, that they, went to the trouble to actually, do research on such a little point like that. But I think it just shows the care that was taken to put this all together.
Yeah, the attention to detail is amazing. You are also working on another book similar to East Bay Cooks?
So right at the beginning of this year, I had started working on, I guess you'd call it the sister book to East Bay Cooks, and it was to be Silicon Valley Cooks. And I had already gotten a commitment from 45 restaurants and had started, I think myself and some of my testers, we tested maybe at least 5 of the recipes, and I'd written probably 4 of the chapters when COVID hit. And everything was locked down, and I had talks with my publisher about all this, and still continue to have talks. I think we last emailed last month about this, and the decision was made that we had to put this on hold at this time because restaurants have enough on their plates right now. To ask them to deal with this, it would just be too much. And also, sad to say that we don't know for sure how many of these restaurants are still going to be operating when, let's say, next year we start work on this book again. I mean, I'm already crushed to know that 4 of the restaurants who had committed to be part of this book have already closed permanently. There's a couple others who are temporarily closed. They tell me it's temporary, but who knows? And things are just going to get more and more difficult for these businesses as the months go on. So I think very much everything is up in the air right now. I still have high hopes. I know my publisher has very high hopes that this book will go through. Maybe we're hoping, sometime next year we can start work on it again. I have something that made me feel a lot of hope and gratitude was the fact that I think in April, when I had to start letting the restaurants know that we were going to halt this book for now, that at least 2 or 3 of them wrote me back weeks later and asked, well, have you decided anything? Is there any new update? Because we're still wanting to be a part of this. So that made me feel very grateful that they are still so excited about this. And, we're hoping that once this book comes out too, because I think it proved to be the case with the East Bay Cooks, that it's also a celebration of a community of restaurants. So the East Bay Cookbook really showed just what a tight-knit group of chefs and restaurants are in that area. And I think the same will happen when the Silicon Valley one comes out too.
Well, you've gotten a good portion of the Bay Area, the San Francisco, the East Bay, and now the Silicon Valley. Would you say that there are differences between all of those restaurants or the community or food culture?
Well, I think that everyone in the Bay Area loves great food. So many of us, for better or worse, we think of ourselves as foodies, and always read what the latest restaurant is that's opening. Even now, I mean, there's such an appetite for who's doing what kind of takeout, and whose takeout looks better or has more little extras as part of it. So I think there are, of course, little differences between the areas. Like, for instance, with the East Bay Cooks Cookbook, San Francisco and wine country, they really get the bulk of the attention from media, especially, big sort of East Coast media. And I think that was one thing that was really nice about East Bay Cooks Cookbook, was that it gave validation that the East Bay also deserves a whole lot of attention for what it does and what it offers. And I'm hoping the same thing will be true of Silicon Valley. I think for a long time, the South Bay sort of had kind of a sleepy dining scene, but over the past, I would say, 8 years, it's really blossomed. A lot of it has been due, maybe I should be thankful about this in San Francisco, but it's so expensive to operate a restaurant there that I think a lot of either first-time chefs or chefs looking to open second outlets of their restaurants in San Francisco started looking on the peninsula, Palo Alto, Menlo Park, and down into the South Bay, San Jose, Los Gatos, to open because the rent would be cheaper. There might be a greater pool of people to pull from, and also I think I know some chefs have said it's just, they also think that it's an untapped area because there's so much competition in San Francisco that there's less so in this area. Then this area is more starved for something really new and exciting. And so I think that the whole dining scene here has really blossomed in the last few years, not just in terms of mom and pop places, but heck, we even have our own, Michelin-starred restaurants down here now, multiple ones, which we didn't have, a few years ago. I think when Michelin first came out many years ago, we kind of always joked that the only reason it came down this far was so that it could include Manresa. But of course, now, you have other restaurants like Protege, which also had a Michelin star, in Palo Alto, Adega, which a few years ago got a Michelin star, and they became the first San Jose restaurants to have that distinction. You figure a city of that size, this population is larger than San Francisco, and this was its first Michelin honor. So I think the other difference in the South Bay, which I'm hoping bodes well for the survival of restaurants here, is that a number of them have tech investors, which could be good or bad, depending on the expectation of their investors, of course, and also investors who are just very well-to-do. There is, of course, a lot of money in Silicon Valley, a lot of wealth, and a lot of people who are highly educated, who have traveled quite a bit. And I've heard some of them, or I've heard restaurateurs tell me the reason why they want to invest tourists down in the South Bay and Peninsula is because they're tired of driving to San Francisco, like the rest of us. They're tired of fighting traffic to go to some place in San Francisco to eat. They just want to have something in their backyard. And so I think we've all benefited because of that.
So they probably have an invested choice to keep these restaurants going, because
Yes.
you don't want to lose what you
exactly. I mean, I've talked to a couple of restaurateurs about this who have well-heeled investors, and they say, yeah, we do have that, and it has been great, but a restaurant cannot survive just on the largest of their financial investors. It has to survive on its own because of customers coming through its doors. So there is that. I mean, I think it gives them a cushion in some ways, but it's not going to be the only factor that determines whether they survive. I think the other thing that has helped some restaurants is the ones that have had the means or the wherewithal to own their own buildings, which is a huge deal right now, because of course, not only just average people living in apartments and homes, are having trouble paying their rents, but so are businesses. And, there are landlords out there who have worked with restaurants to try and, mitigate the situation that they're in now. But I know other restaurateurs have told me, no, they've gotten no help whatsoever from their landlords. So it's a difficult situation.
It is. You have a food blog called Food Gal, right? Do you use that platform to help promote the restaurants in your area or in the Bay Area during this time? Have you kind of switched some of your, the writings from your own recipes to talking about these restaurants and the trials and tribulations of the hospitality industry?
Well, I try to always make a mix of things on the blog so that people kind of come to it not knowing exactly what day is going to bring, but just something interesting, hopefully. So I do recipes. A lot of them are local authors or just chefs from around the country, from the nation. I receive many cookbooks from publishers who want me to help promote them. So I'll cook out of them and take photos of what I've made and post the recipes online and on the blog. And I think with all of us cooking more at home, that's gotten a lot more attention. I noticed like quite a few recipes that are very sort of easy and things that are made from things that we have in our pantry all the time or our freezer really get a lot of hits or attention. I get people writing to me on Facebook saying, I just made this, I didn't have the ginger, but I put more garlic in and instead it worked out really well. So that always makes me happy. And so I used to write about restaurants that I dined at, inside. I'd bring my camera, take photos of the food, the interior and whatnot, and post that. And now what I'm doing is like I said, my husband and I, we try and get takeout at least once a week. And so I'll bring it all home and he, thankfully will wait patiently while I say, don't touch anything yet. I need to take photos. So I'll take photos of all the food and then sort of write a capsule. And I've been calling it sort of what I've been getting for takeout of late, and I think I'm up to part 9 now of showing the various places that I've been and what I've gotten. And that's actually gotten a lot of views. And I've gotten a lot of emails from people who I hadn't heard from before telling me, thank you so much for doing this, at this time, because it's so great to sort of see what restaurants are offering out there. And, we look forward to it because it tells us about new places that we want to go to and get takeout from. So I try and do my little part there. And I hope I am giving people new things to look forward to. We're all sort of stuck at home. And, if we see something exciting for takeout and it brightens, that day, I'm all for it. I'm happy to help with that any way I can.
Well, they're very lucky to have you promoting them. You were talking about recipes, and I'm going to go back to the book. How do you test the recipes? Because as a former chef, I can say that not everything has a measurement. So
Yes.
did the chefs provide accurate recipes, and or did you have to do a lot of tasting and then help them write a recipe?
All of the above. So some chefs can just write a recipe as if it looked like it came something out of a cookbook. I mean, it's very clear, it's very detailed, very precise, and it just works. Most of the time, though, they have to be tweaked. We have some restaurateurs or bakers who I know told me that they cut down a recipe and they gave it to one of their friends and said, "Hey, I know you like to bake, and can you just try making this at home? I think it comes out. I've tried it myself, but I want to see if you can do it." So there were a couple people I know who did that. And then I tested probably at least half of the recipes in East Bay Cooks. And then I have a team of very wonderful testers who are family and friends who like to cook. And a lot of them have their own preferences on things. I always ask, like, are there certain things that you don't like to cook or that you like to cook, or are there ingredients that you're allergic to? Or, I have a couple friends who just love baking, and so they got the bulk of the baking recipes to test. One of my friends, I'm so grateful for her because I know this was such a pain at times. As you know, bakers love to measure things very precisely in gram measurements.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always like I cringe when I have to tell them that the publisher wants it in empirical measurements in cups and teaspoons and tablespoons, because that's the way most home cooks bake or measure things. And so a lot of the recipes one of my friends tested, I would give her and I say, "Okay, I hate to do this, but you're going to have to measure all this out and convert it for me." And she's like, "Oh, okay." So, some of the chefs also, I think, would cut down things, of course, because normally they're making a recipe for 100 servings, and they would cut it down, cut it down, cut it out. And so we test what they gave us. And I, would have a friend say, "We made it. It was great, but we had like 8 cups of gravy left over." And I'm thinking, okay, well, we really have to cut that thing down. And so I go back to the chef and say, we need to really cut this down for, serving 6 or serving 4 in a home environment. So can you work with me on doing this so that we do it accurately? And then we would retest it to make sure that it came out correctly, it was seasoned, and it tasted fine.
That's a lot of work to get.
Yeah, it was.
We all appreciate it. We have a couple of questions that I'd love to pose to you, so I want to make sure we have enough time for it. So, and there's the first one. Look it. So he's Gary is a former Dragon Boat teammate. Thanks for highlighting East Bay. Pre-pandemic, what international food trends were you seeing? Seemed like hot pot places were getting big. Any others?
I think Korean food definitely is having a big moment. Unfortunately, Mom, which is in Palo Alto, which had a Michelin star in its very first year, high-end, super high-end Korean restaurant, which was doing a style that I don't think anyone else was doing on the West Coast, closed during the pandemic, and their husband and wife chefs left. And then for a while, I think Mom was converted into sort of a high-end pantry, and then that sort of ceased operations, and it's sort of up in the air now what's going to happen with that. But definitely Korean. I think a lot of people, I think, like, say 10 years ago, I think many people would turn up their nose at kimchi. Uh, like, oh my God, what is this? It's like so pungent. But now, I mean, you see it everywhere. It's so available in most supermarkets in some way, and you see it incorporated in all sorts of fun ways, like in mac and cheese, in egg dishes, and it's really become just, especially I think for us in California, something that we all crave, and we, want to make at home too. A lot of people are trying their hands at fermenting their own cabbage and cucumbers.
Yeah. Well, that one comment you made about moms brings us to another question from Michael, and Michael asks if there are any creative ways that restaurants have been dealing with the pandemic, and if you know of any success stories.
Wow, I think it's a success that they're just the ones that are still hanging in there are still trying to do what they do, and trying to do it in a way that still is on brand and speaks to what they were trying to do before. I haven't had a chance to check it out yet, but I know the Plume Tours in Saratoga, which is also a Michelin starred restaurant, they had been closed the whole time during the pandemic because especially with fine dining, it's very difficult to try and transition to takeout. The food is just not really geared toward that. And it takes so many people to do that type of cooking that to bring on a team like that for, very few orders a night, it would be very expensive. So just last month, they finally got the approval to build an outdoor area and to start serving outdoors again. So like I said, I haven't seen it in person myself, but the photos I have seen of it, I've just been blown away because it's not just, a couple tables out on the sidewalk. It has like a chandelier hanging down over the tables. There's like a little fountain. They brought out the actual tables and chairs that used to be inside the restaurant. So these are, really high-end seating. It's not just, a couple of lawn chairs or something out there. And Peter Armelino, who's the chef there, I know he's doing sort of kind of Plume Tours favorites over the years, and serving sort of a shortened tasting menu out there. So I think that was really creative to sort
That
of
is creative.
Go the extra stuff to do that. I know also the Village Pub, another Michelin star restaurant, they spent $50,000 to build an outdoor deck where part of their parking area was, so that they could start doing outdoor dining. And that's proved really popular. I know another restaurant, this really sweet family-owned place, Hachi to Hachi, also in Saratoga. It's actually right across the street pretty much from Plume Tours. Jen Suzuki is the owner there. Just a wonderful, sweet guy, just beloved by his regulars. Even people who have like left the area, when they come back to visit, they still go eat there, even if it's just once a year. And I saw online that he started doing outdoor dining, and he actually set up a sushi bar outside so that he could do his famous nigiri nights, which sell out, even when he was doing it indoors, those just sold out in a flash. So I thought that was really creative of him to do something like that and to bring that experience outdoors.
So do you think that creativity will last? Is it long lasting? Karen was wondering post-pandemic if there are any long-term changes to this industry and if we've learned anything of how we serve customers.
Well, I think, unfortunately, the pandemic and its after effects are going to be with us for a very long time. I think you always hear or read stories about, yes, restaurants may reopen to, 25% capacity or less. And that's all well and fine, but how many people in the public are going to feel absolutely comfortable dining indoors again? Like I said, it's a very personal decision. And the people who feel comfortable doing that, I'm all for them doing it. And the people who are not yet ready to do that, maybe they have underlying health issues, which makes it even riskier for them. If they just want to continue doing takeout, that's fine too. But I think because this is going to be with us for so long, it's going to radically change how restaurants operate. I'm guessing that any new restaurants that are built, if they can, they're going to have an outdoor area. Before, even though we have great weather in the Bay Area, maybe that wasn't such a big consideration. But now I think that will be, because, who knows if this is going to reoccur or if some other, virus is going to happen a couple of years from now and we're going to be in this situation again. And if there can be outdoor dining, I think restaurateurs are going to plan for that for sure. I think takeout is going to be with us for quite a while. It's one way that restaurants can definitely make some revenue in a safe manner. I did a story recently for the Nob Hill Gazette about the future of fine dining, because it's such an expensive type of restaurant to operate. It requires so many people, and it also requires customers to want to do like a 3-hour dining experience. Are people going to want to do that again? Are people going to be comfortable with that? And, I was surprised in writing that story that a number of restaurants told me, like, when they were able to reopen their restaurants in Santa Clara County, there was like this short window of, I think, 7 days where restaurants all of a sudden were given the okay to open up indoors at limited capacity, but then they had to shut it down again. But in that time, I know, the Village Pub got like reservations for like over 100 guests for the next few days, and those all had to be either canceled or moved outside. So I think there's definitely an appetite for people returning to the restaurant scene, because let's face it, I think all miss that. It's great getting takeout. I love it, and the food is good, but just being able to call up your friends, go out with your family, and just have this relaxing experience where you're not cooking at home, because I think we're all kind of sick of that right now, even those of us who love doing it, and have someone else, care for you and give you something that you might not ever want to make at home, or you might not ever be able to make at home, something with creativity and passion that really, just gives you this warm feeling like you're cared for. So I think restaurants will definitely change. A lot of them, unfortunately, are going to probably not make it through this. But, as one friend said to me, chefs and restaurateurs, they're used to being in the weeds in the kitchen when they're just slammed from left and right and have to just focus and pivot and react very quickly. And I think they're going to be able to do that again, for all the storefronts that end up being closed. I truly believe that there will be others who eventually will start up new ventures. What they look like, we don't know for sure yet, but I think that there will always be people who want to do what they do. As one chef said, who's about to open a restaurant, his second restaurant, I said, why didn't you ever just think, I'm going to give up and walk away from this and not open it? And he said, it's all I know how to do. It's what I love to do. And, we should all support them in their passion, because, we love the work that they do, and we hope that it's going to be around after all of this ends.
Yeah, I agree. food is going to change, and you're saying a lot about the takeout. So, what do you think about the ghost kitchens that are out there and pop-ups? Are there any ones that you've encountered that would not have existed if it were not for the pandemic?
I think a lot of restaurants or a lot of chefs are getting very creative. A lot of line cooks, pastry chefs have either been furloughed or gotten laid off, or their restaurants have closed, and they're needing to make a living, of course. And it's really difficult trying to get a job at this point when so many establishments are either closed or they have only like 50% of their normal team back, because that's all that they can do right now. I know that there are a couple chefs who've started their own sort of pop-ups. I think he's watching, so I'll name Carlos Sanchez. He's one of my favorite pastry chefs who used to be at Parcel 104, this well-regarded restaurant in the Santa Clara Marriott right by Levi's Stadium. He just started baking a couple weeks ago, these incredible fruit tarts and banana cream pies and cookies, and he's selling them now to sort of like a list of loyal customers that he had known at Parcel 104, and he's hoping eventually that maybe he can find a little retail spot to actually have his own little bakery. I was also just corresponding recently with Wade Tamara, who has Sam Choi's Poke Place up in San Bruno, which is closed right now during pandemic. And he told me he just started doing, he started making like lily koi sauces, barbecue sauces, and coconut cream pies and things like that. And I think he's looking perhaps to see if he could start selling them at farmers markets. Otherwise, right now, he's just kind of doing delivery himself from Fremont to all parts of the Bay Area. So I think you have seen a lot of creativity among chefs who are trying to, still provide for their families and do what they love and give customers something to root for. I think we'll see a lot more of this. Unfortunately, I know there have been cases in the East Bay where some chefs have been shut down because they've been operating at their home, and the cottage law that allows people to bake or to cook at their own homes instead of getting a commercial kitchen and selling the food, for whatever reason, hasn't been fully adopted by certain communities. So it's causing this real headache among people who are trying to do this, and then other people, neighbors or what have you, who are calling to complain that these operations are existing. So it's very difficult, and I hope that there would be more creative solutions to this. As for pop-ups, though, I think one of the things that we're all excited about this week is that Horn Barbecue is gonna, I think, finally open this week in Oakland at the old Brown Sugar Kitchen space. Matt Horn started at a farmer's market in Tracy selling his incredible barbecue, and then he started doing pop-ups where he would get 1,000 people in line waiting for 4 hours, for his brisket that he starts cooking at 2 a.m. And so he's had a long road to finally starting and building his own brick and mortar. And I know he was supposed to open on Saturday, and then he didn't get final city approval, so it got pushed back. And I think he's hoping now Thursday is the day. He's taking pre-orders. And I tell you, if you can get some of that brisket, no matter how long you have to wait, it is worth it.
All right, Carolyn, because I live in the East Bay.
I'm not even that big of a beef eater, and that stuff was just mind-blowing.
I know what I'm going to be doing later on. Which brings me back to another East Bay question from Katie. First, thanks for spotlighting all the amazing restaurants in the East Bay. She loves the East Bay. How do you think the Bay Area is doing with female people of color representation in the restaurant scene?
I think the Bay Area is doing a lot better than a lot of other places. I think that, especially with the Me Too and the Black Lives Matter movements that have started, it's only accelerated the appreciation and support we have for businesses of color and for women-owned businesses. And you see that especially in the East Bay because the East Bay, like I said, is such a wealth of mom and pop restaurants and restaurateurs and chefs from all over the world. I mean, pretty much any cuisine you can think of, the most obscure, you can probably find it somewhere being made in the East Bay. And, the costs for a long time were much lower in the East Bay. So it was, relatively speaking, slightly easier for newbie chefs to start new establishments in the East Bay. So that's also why you see so many wonderful places owned by Black women, Asian women, just women of all colors and backgrounds. And they have been, I think, very much boosted up by supporters in the community and throughout the entire Bay Area, because what they're doing, and it shows in the food that they serve, they're creating dishes that really speak from their own backgrounds and from their own hearts. And it's just wonderful stuff that we've never been able to really fully appreciate and enjoy before. And I think we're all sort of just hungry for more of it now. And I mean, that's one thing I'm hopeful too, that as the economy sort of finds its new equilibrium, that there will be more opportunities for people with perhaps not the greatest means, not the deep pockets, to be able to get support either financially or just socially, to be able to start their businesses and to bring something unique to this area.
Oh, I love that last, optimistic note. That's a high. And now I'm going to go back to the questions I love to ask about a cookbook, which are, what are the 3 must-make recipes from this book that you would suggest? I'm sure you should make everything that's in the book, but what are the 3 that really speak to you?
Okay, I'm going to start this by saying I want to apologize to, the 30 odd if I don't mention your particular recipe. I love all your recipes, and I can't thank you guys and gals enough for sharing them with me in East Bay Cooks. I think it really just made the book so special, your contributions. So yes, Ida, put me on the spot. So, okay, I will give you, let's say, 3 and 3.5 suggestions on recipes from the book that jump to mind immediately. So one is Bill Campo's lamb larb, which larb is typically made with, usually I would say chicken or pork, but lamb just makes it something else. I mean, it has a bolder flavor, and this is such an easy recipe to make. It's basically a stir fry of ground lamb with Asian seasonings, and then you eat it in like a lettuce cup. Or you could throw it on Asian noodles or, some tofu. But it's so simple, especially if you already have a lot of Asian sauces and seasonings in your pantry, or if you want to go take, a trip to your neighborhood store and get some of this stuff and just have it always on hand. It's just, you can make this dish in like less than half an hour, and it's on the table for dinner and everybody will be wowed. The second one I would say would be the pizza recipe from A16, because we're all eating a lot of pizza these days, and why not try making it at home? This is a very simple recipe. You know, there is some technique involved, and I will say that the more you make pizza and the more you work with dough, the easier it gets, because you get to understand what it should feel like, and how to work with it, and how to flatten it out correctly. And this recipe is definitely a winner. I've made it many times, especially the early days of the pandemic, when my husband could eat pizza every day, I swear to God. And we made this recipe probably 3 times, and we were very short on yeast. So we thought, okay, we're going to use it for something. We're going to use it for this recipe. It was worth it. So the other one I would say is another one of my very favorite restaurants, which unfortunately is temporarily closed right now, Duende in Oakland. And it is their famous ensalada de cal, which is a cabbage salad. And I know every time I say that, and even when people see it on a plate, they're like, cabbage. Yeah. You know, they're like, what's so exciting about this? It is just the most incredible salad you will ever have. And I'll give you an example. When we took, when this salad was made for the photo shoot, and, you know, we, of course, were munching on stuff after the things were photographed. And I remember the food stylist was looking at the salad, and she goes, oh, cabbage salad. Okay. You know, she wasn't really excited or thrilled about it. And then she decided to taste some of it, and she was like, wow, what is in this? You know, and it's just this incredible, very nutty, briny tasting, really full flavored salad that is a cinch to make. It's Savoy cabbage. You just like cut it up into julienne strips, and you have like a bunch of toasted pistachios on it. And then you grate Spanish cheese into like this shower of cheese all over it. And then the dressing is super simple. Oh, there's also a lot of olives in there. The dressing is super simple, but I think the thing that makes it is the champagne vinegar, and then also just a very tiny touch of heavy cream, which just emulsifies the dressing and just gives it a little touch of lushness. But I tell you, if you make this salad, you will eat up the entire bowl of it that night. It's that good. And if you don't, the best part is this is a hearty salad because it is cabbage. It lasts really well the next day to enjoy, or even the day after.
Oh.
So my extra recipe, and this is for people who like to bake and are wanting a challenge. And I don't say that because it's a complicated recipe. It just requires several steps. So Companier Fine Catering, which is out in Emeryville, they are this high-end catering company that does all these incredible tech company events. They do Hollywood weddings in wine country. They are a team of people who are fine dining chefs. So this is not your steam table kind of catering company. It is, they have, you know, everything is just made with the utmost care, as if you were dining at a Michelin star restaurant. So their consulting pastry chef came from the French Laundry. So I think that tells you the quality of this dessert recipe, which I'm going to tell you about. So it is called a campfire kulfi. And what it basically is a very chic kind of grown-up s'mores. And you make the graham cracker crust, you make the chocolate ganache, which has a touch of scotch in it, and you make the marshmallow topping, and then you blow torch the top of it. And so how good is this? Okay, so my friend who did tested most of my baking recipes, did this recipes, which again, all of it had to be converted from grams. And it took her a couple days to make. And, you know, that's the nice thing about this recipe. It can be done in steps over several days. And also it makes a lot, but the thing freezes really well. So you want to eat half of it and put the rest in the freezer for, you know, another month. It'll stay really well. So she made this, and then she lives in the same city I do. And so next thing I know, I got a text from her. Are you home? I'm like, yeah, why? She goes, you have to come. I have to bring you some of this right now. It's so good. And so she shows up on my doorstep with like this Tupperware of, a few squares of this s'mores. And she had to go run an errand after that. So I just took it. And I took one bite and I was just like, oh my God. It's like one of the best desserts I've ever had in my life. It is just so chocolatey, and the scotch it almost gives that little smokiness that you would get from a campfire. And it's just, think of your perfect s'more. And this is 10 times that.
Oh.
It's a lot of work. Like I said, even my friend said, she might make it again for a special occasion. But the other, the other endorsement I would say is her husband, who can be a picky eater, told her after she gave some to me, don't give any more away to anybody. So that's how good this is.
I might have to make it on the bucket list. Well, we are up at time now, Carolyn, and we really want to thank you for coming and joining us today and sharing.
Could I add one little thing?
Of course.
People are interested in getting their own copies of East Bay Cook. They are available. I haven't checked, since pandemic times, but I know that they were available at many of the restaurants who are featured in the book. They are selling them. So A16, Belcampo, East End in Alameda. A lot of the restaurants there still have books and are still signing them. They were also available at the time, I know in January, they probably still are, at the Costco's in the East Bay. And then even in San Francisco, I was so thrilled when I actually happened to visit the gift shop at SF MoMA when it was open before pandemic, and they were selling the book there. Also, the Oakland Museum gift shop is selling the book, and a lot of the local booksellers in the East Bay, like Books Inc., Green Apple Books. I'm looking at my list here. Let's see, Builder's Booksource in Berkeley. Moe's Books in Berkeley, Orinda Books, they were all selling them. So it's a great way, again, to support local businesses if you want a new cookbook yourself, or you want to give a gift later this year for Christmas or birthday.
Thank you. Yeah. And also you can order from that takeout and get the book at the same time would be a great option. So again, thank you very much, Carolyn.
Thank you for having me. It was so much fun. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.